Very good morning to all of you. My name is Vasudha Sridharan, and on behalf of Cumulus Networks, I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, Using Linux to Manage the Entire Rack. Presenting today will be David Sin. David is a Customer Solutions Engineer at Cumulus Networks. David is a networking professional with 25 years of diverse experience on both sides of the table, from supporting customers and developing solutions at Cisco to designing and building worldwide enterprise and cloud infrastructure at Microsoft, Amazon, and others. This webinar will be about 30 to 45 minutes. We will answer a few questions from the participants at the end time if time permits. For those of you interested, you have the opportunity to ask questions during the webinar by using the window marked questions. Simply type in your question and click send. You can also tweet your questions to us. Our Twitter handle is @Cumulus Networks. And with that, I'd like to turn this presentation over to David.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us all today. I'd like to talk to you about this new platform that we have called the Cumulus Rack Management Platform. So let's go ahead and get started. The Cumulus Rack Management Platform is designed to give you a new way to manage and operate your out-of-band management network that many of you have inside of your data center or enterprise network. Why is out-of-band management somewhat important for people? Often this is the last line of access to get into network devices such that you are able to directly reach it independent of any in-band changes that you may make. Sometimes there are also requirements, such as either for security separation that you need to have out-of-band management to get in so that you can lock down what can actually get into both your servers and your network equipment in your rack, such that only you can manage them and not someone nefariously trying to get in and manage them. Also, there are multiple people that have deployed this in such a way that they want to have complete isolation from their customer traffic, be it internal or external customer, such that anything that they may be doing on the network does not block you as the operator and manager of the network to be able to get in and control it. These networks have mostly grown inside of the data center due to the enhancements of KVM, IPMI, DRAC, and other access tools that allow you to get into your hosts without having to have a large distributed keyboard, video, and mouse solution like you used to have, and now do it all over a very easy and consistent Ethernet network to access your devices. One of the things I have seen across my experience in talking to our customers is that these out-of-band networks are very highly variable based on both the economics, the operational requirements, and all of these sorts of things. So let's kind of dive into that. What you'll find in the past, or what I've found in the past, is that there's a whole spectrum of approaches to how people build their out-of-band management network. Some people will build what I'll call the parallel model. So this is leveraging very similar gear or the exact same gear that they're using in their front-end production path. This gives you a very consistent interface, very consistent support. There's one location to go to. You can run the same version of software on top of there. When you have something that you need to be spared out, it can either be stuff that you have off the shelf or stuff where you already have one large engagement with that manufacturer or supplier to be able to provide you all of the gear that you're looking at. One of the larger drawbacks to this is that this solution can often be rather pricey. So often what you'll find is instead of a truly parallel deployment, you will see that a number of people will deploy a network where they are using slightly lower class gear in their out-of-band management. So instead of the fully, say, routing and switching capable gear, they may be purchasing lower end gear that may only do switching or potentially even has a different interface, but again, it's from one supplier such that they're able to get at least that consistency across it. On the other end of the spectrum, there are definitely networks that are run on very much what I would call is on the cheap, or by the lowest class device that I possibly can, just to allow me to have an out-of-band management network as a worst case way to get in. Often, you'll be purchasing gear from, say, the local big box retailer or online retailer. Often these platforms have very, very different interfaces, if at all. Often they are not able to be managed or very, very lightly managed and monitored. But the reason that a number of people go down this path is that this is potentially the most inexpensive way to build their out-of-band management network. It does kind of lead you to a sort of catch-22 management solution at times, where sometimes you have to debug the out-of-band management network before you can actually go in and debug the production network that you're getting to across the out-of-band management. But again, this is a spectrum, and a lot of these choices are driven by capital acquisition costs and operational costs, and sometimes those are not necessarily totally visualized as you look at having different interfaces, different approaches can again raise your operational cost or the amount of effort you have to do when you do need to reach into these networks. When you also look at it, there are also very highly variable designs to the network. Again, some customers or some will approach their out-of-band management network with a very highly available design. Redundant uplinks, redundant core devices, routing at the top of rack, small default domains, because the out-of-band management network is maybe more than just out-of-band, but is the primary method to which they manage their devices. This allows you to get some operational improvements in that, the smaller your routing domains are, it's potentially easier to find hosts. Say if one subnet is doled out for your out-of-band management network in each physical rack. That is definitely a choice for some people, and those definitely require that you may need more than just a very basic level out-of-band management device. You may need one that either can do routing, or you may need one that has the ability to have more advanced features to allow you to do that smaller and smaller segmentation that maybe you cannot get from the lower end devices. You then sort of have on the other end of the spectrum very much the best effort design. So these are ones where the out-of-band management is largely just a very flat layer 2 network, potentially a very large core switch that everything plugs into. Hopefully you're running spanning tree or you have some way to rely upon loop avoidance. Sometimes you're doing link aggregation in some of the newer deployments to give you some measure of uplink redundancy. But another component of this is that often finding hosts can be rather difficult. The larger that layer 2 domain is, the less locality you get in knowing that the IP address or MAC address mapping that occurs inside of there. As we talk further about RMP, we'll be addressing all of these and how you can do a lot of this and reach this information much more richer by leveraging Linux directly on top of the out-of-band management switch. Before we go there, I'd like to talk about what Cumulus Linux is, because Cumulus RMP is derived from it. Cumulus Linux truly is a Linux distribution that runs on top of open networking hardware. This gives you the ability to leverage the rich tools that are inside of Linux in your network equipment. You can go and provision the box just as a normal Linux system by defining the bridging that you want, the routing interfaces that you want, leveraging open source routing protocols such as Quagga and Bird, and then leverage the rich ecosystem of network orchestration tools, automation, overlay virtualization, and monitoring that you get from being a direct Linux distribution. We do not do as some other models do, where Linux is just leveraged to boot the system. Cumulus Linux and Cumulus RMP is a direct Linux distribution. When you log in, it is like being on a Linux server and allows you to leverage all the existing Linux tools that are out there on your core network devices and now your out-of-band management network device. So let's dive a little further into Cumulus RMP. So this is taking what we have done in the leading class Cumulus Linux software and now deploying it on a smaller platform specifically focused just for the out-of-band network space. What this does is this now gives you the ability to have end-to-end Linux inside of your network and potentially, based on your deployment, inside of all of your servers as well. This allows you to complete the rack. You no longer have a third-party box running a separable operating system or doing something different to manage your out-of-band, so that you're able to reuse tools, monitoring, automation, all of these things across the entirety of the solution. This also gives you the ability to now have an extensible Linux operating system running on your out-of-band with tools that we pre-ship with the solution or ones that you can add yourself to be able to give you a richer access model to the devices on your out-of-band management network. So let's dive into that. So as I said, one of the largest benefits is you now have a native Linux networking to manage your switches. So if you're already using Cumulus Linux in your network, you can use the same automation tool and configuration tools. You can also then have the same operational interfaces. You can leverage all of the open source tools. And now we have this rich Linux operating system running on top of your rack. So let's talk about automation. If you are already leveraging Cumulus Linux or you're just new to Cumulus Linux, because we are directly Linux on top of the open hardware solutions, you can leverage existing automation tools such as Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Salt, just as you do or your server teams may do to deploy applications, configuration, snippets, manageability, and all of these things into the server fleet. You can leverage those now in your network fleet, both on Cumulus Linux and on Cumulus RMP. The Cumulus RMP solution is a derivative of Cumulus Linux that basically allows you to do everything that you can do on Cumulus Linux, except for the fact that the features are limited by the underlying hardware. The hardware platform here is just focused on L2 switching. So routing is extraordinarily limited in it, but you can still go in and do traditional layer 2 features as you have found in the traditional Cumulus Linux solution, now with the same automation tools. Shipping with the Cumulus RMP solution is we have pre-packaged, pre-installed ISC DHCP, DNS mask, and other tools. What this allows you to do is you can go and choose to run a local DHCP or DNS server. This allows you to have more localized operation, either because you're building, this is the first rack that's being deployed in your data center, so that you need it to kickstart the rest of your network, or be it that you want to have a very distributed model with localized DHCP based on the rich information that can be found because of the fact that you're doing DHCP on the out-of-band switch for handing out very specific IP addresses to device. They're localized in the network based on information such as being able to look at LLTP, looking at port, looking at other things that you have now that you have the ability to run a standard off-the-shelf DHCP server locally in your top of rack and be able to derive rich information that allows you to choose what you need to do to make your network more performant to reduce your operational load. Also, by localizing these services, you can potentially have better fault isolation. You are less reliant on, say, a large, your large area WAN in the case of some forms of faults or failures or issues that may occur. You can have local DNS resolval, local DHCP, and such. Another area that we focused on is also pre-installing TFTP server, and then also the set of tools that are already in DNS mask like I talked about. This allows you to go do things such as locally PXE or ONI booting devices that are in the rack. You can add on to the storage of the RMP solution through the USB port that's included on there and allow you to go and download the PXE config to the set of servers that are going to boot below without being reliant upon any remote infrastructure. That can lower your WAN bandwidth cost or your data center cost, your reliance on your data center bandwidth as well, to be able to go and bring these servers up by locally PXE booting them, locally being able to cache that information. Also pre-installed is the IPMI tool. This allows you to go and reach into the system, the physical servers that are in the rack, and do the management of the physical servers locally without being reliant upon remote tools. This way, again, in your boot starting the data center, you can plug into the serial console port of the switch, run the IPMI tool, directly reach the servers and manage them if you need, or it also gives you the ability to, again, have that Linux experience right there in the out-of-band switch that you can log in via SSH or Telnet as you choose, locally run the tools, and know that you're actually operating on the platform locally off the box, as opposed to logging in and remotely hoping that you're actually managing the one box that you're looking for, and having to correlate that when you restart it, you see the correct link going down. All of that is right there on the same platform for you. Some of the other things that you can do, because this is a Linux distribution, is go and install, say, a web server, such as Apache or Nginx or whichever web server meets your operational needs. This can allow you to also do things such as having local update caches. You can mirror apt and yum caches to the local out-of-band switch and allow you to locally distribute the file, either as part of the fact that this is the kickstart of your first set of systems in your data center, or as a regular thing to allow you to pre-distribute the files and locally serve them, potentially to cut down how many times you have to go out to the open internet to go get those new packages. All of this is open and accessible for you to do because we truly are a Linux distribution being based on Debian Linux. You can install packages from our repository or from the top of tree Debian repository as you need to be able to enhance and expand the solution. So I've talked about a number of the different things that you can do on top of this. Some of the things, such as the enhanceability. Hold on just a second. With Cumulus Linux, this provides you a proven network OS. Cumulus Linux has been running on more than 1 million ports all over the world in large-scale and small-scale data centers. Cumulus RMP is directly derived on that version of Linux and just allows you to have the same sort of tools and accessibility that you have in your production environment now in your out-of-band network. No longer is your out-of-band network closed or limited. You now have the ability to go and install applications, enable pre-installed application, automate in the same way that you've been doing in the rest of your network, and give you open accessible tools and customize this as you need to be able to deploy now both in your production network and now in your out-of-band network. So I've now talked about all the really cool things you can do with it. How do you actually get it? Well, the very first way to get this is Penguin Computing is going to be the first hardware supplier to be able to source a Cumulus RMP in their Artica 4804 IP-RMP platform. This is a 48 by 101000 TX-based platform with 4 10GbE uplinks and USB port, a serial console port, and then an Ethernet port for the CPU should you need to use it. Although you can question whether you need an out-of-band for your out-of-band. Regardless, the platform ships with Cumulus RMP pre-installed. As you can see there is promotional pricing through 6/30/2015 for $995 per platform. Included in that price is 3 years of software and hardware support for the entire solution. And those are extendable should you want longer support on those, which it would be best to engage Penguin directly on that. As you can see at the bottom, I have the URL to this, so I'll leave that up there for a few minutes so that people can take a look at it. But this is the first hardware platform that supports the RMP solution. Others will be coming over time, but Penguin is definitely in the lead in being the first that has done this with us. And with that, I will open it up to questions.
Great. Awesome presentation. Thank you, David. We have a couple of questions that have come through the chat, and let me start off with that. The first question is, how is Cumulus RMP actually different from Cumulus Linux?
Got it. Cumulus RMP is basically almost identical to Cumulus Linux, other than the fact that it only operates on the RMP platform. And because the RMP hardware platforms are using switch silicon, the hardware ASICs that actually do all of the packet forwarding, that are optimized for L2 only, it is not set up to be able to go and do routing and sort of the advanced L3 style features as you would normally expect from a traditional top of rack or core switch router as you would find. But being based on Cumulus Linux, you can install all of the normal Cumulus Linux packages, and as I mentioned, all of the normal Debian packages on top of it. We don't limit any of those, limit you in any way from doing that. It is just that the hardware, because of the switch silicon that is inside of it, is only optimized for L2 and the smaller tables that you normally find inside of the out-of-band. If you'd like to get the very specifics about that, please definitely reach out to us, and we'll have the local account team that covers the area that you're in go into as much detail as you may need on what the hardware platforms are able to do.
Okay. Next question. Any chance to have this platform at EdgeCore products?
I would imagine that our other ODMs, so EdgeCore is one of the hardware suppliers that are on our normal HCL for our Cumulus Linux product. I would imagine that a number of the other hardware suppliers beyond Penguin would definitely be looking at this and looking to get into this market. As you can see, the price point of the Penguin platform is definitely very competitive to what you have found in other spots, and the ability to have a consistent user interface across both your out-of-band and your production network is definitely very interesting to a number of customers, which is why we focused on this. So again, I would expect EdgeCore to be joining the solution in other hardware platforms. I can't comment on any future roadmaps with regard to that. I would definitely suggest reaching out to your EdgeCore representative, or definitely reach out to your local Cumulus Networks representative, and we can work on getting you that information on when, where, or why other platforms may be coming in this space.
Okay. Next question. In the section on DHCP and DNS, you talked about all of these applications being installed. Does that mean I have to uninstall them so my security team doesn't have a problem?
No. So by default, these are the top, the standard Debian-based packages for ISD, DHCP, and others that are pre-installed on the system, but they are deactivated. So the box will not come up and start serving out DHCP. The box will not start running, DNS server. It will not start serving out web files without your explicit intent to go in and actually activate those applications. So basically just the Debian packages are installed, the configuration files are all set to disable them, and you would have to explicitly go in and enable them for them to be able to activate. The reason we chose to have these pre-installed is, again, when you're deploying at, say, your first site deployment, it is potentially better to have them ready and available in case you need them, where you may not have wide area connectivity to go and grab the packages. So we've just taken the option of pre-installing them for you so you can activate them if you need them, or if you don't, they are just there and they can be removed if you want, or just be left alone and they will not do anything.
Okay. The next question is, does it have a web interface by default?
At this point in time, no, it does not have a web interface. Again, being derived from Cumulus Linux, we have focused more on the traditional automation tools that you see, say, at the web scale customers that are leveraging tools of such form as Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and Salt to push out configurations based on a centralized configuration management model. So at this point in time, it does not have a web interface, but that is something that we're looking at either doing ourselves or working with a partner on. So I guess stay tuned for that, but we do not have it at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you. One more question. With all of these distributed services, isn't that going to make my support work harder? It should not, and it should not. The services are there for you to be able to leverage, again, like I talked about with the fact that they're pre-installed, if you choose in your environment. If you choose the fact that you do want to have that local cache, you definitely can, but because it's Linux and because it's very easy to automate on top of it, you can set those tools to be able to pull when the connectivity is there or when needed or on a time-based schedule or whatever random way you would like, whatever fits your network's needs, to go and resync for the configuration file, resync the cache, pull down the new DNS master files, all of these things, and set them up to automatically do that.
So definitely it comes down to your overall automation schema. If you're not very much into automation and you still are doing things more on the manual side of things, then potentially those distributed services are not a right fit for you. So continue to leverage the core services just like you always have, but know that if that changes, you have the option to go to it. If you already have investment in automation and the ability to push files out, push configuration, restart services easily, say with any of the aforementioned automation packages, then those are now there for you to be able to go and do that and leverage the fact that that can cut down WAN bandwidth. It can do a lot more localized services. You don't have to worry quite as much about your uplinks and things along those lines. So really, our overall approach is about giving you choice in what fits what you want to do and not dictating that you have to do it one way or another. So this is just another way to allow you to pick what works for you.
Perfect. We are almost out of time now. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. And thank you, David, for a great presentation. We hope you found this presentation about using Linux to manage the entire rack useful. We would love it if you offered feedback via the follow-up email. Please tune in to our next webinar on June 3rd, Open Networking for Your Open Stack, with our CTO, Nolan Leek. The details are available on our website at cumulusnetworks.com/webinar. Thank you for your time today. We look forward to seeing you in our next webinar.